So when Honda started the monumental task of redesigning the Civic lineup last year, the company promised us 5 different chapters of the Civic family. Now I've already showed you guys chapter 1 and 2 in the form of the sedan and the coupe, and today I'm outside of San Francisco on my way to Monterey driving the 3rd chapter. This is the all-new 2017 Honda Civic Hatchback, a body style that we in America haven't seen in the last 10 years. So was it worth the wait? Let's take a look and find out. So when you talk about the Civic name in general, this is a very important vehicle for Honda. The company consistently sells over 300,000 units every year, and it's constantly changing places, with the Corolla as being the best-selling compact car here in America. So when the all-new hatchback finally decided to come to the States, Honda wanted to make sure that they appealed to that specific buyer with the overall design. You can see this particular one that I'm showing you is the Sport model. It kind of sits above the LX, below the EX trim, and it comes with a couple of different styling elements its own. For example, this particular one being in Rally Red has a very attractive shade of piano black accents in the front. It has it in the grille and the lower fascia, and it also comes with a aero kit that is exclusive to the Sport and the Sport Touring trim. Now, for those of you who like your cars to stand out with LEDs, all Civic models come standard with LED daytime running lights. Unfortunately, if you guys want full LED headlights, you have to go for the Sport Touring, as all the other trims will have these projector halogen bulbs. Now, when you look at the actual profile of the Civic hatchback, it does look larger than the sedan when it's actually not. Honda maintains the same wheelbase and width. However, this car is about 0.5 inches taller, but it is 4.5 inches shorter than the actual sedan. The increased height probably gives this car a little bit of a bigger appearance, but Honda basically wanted this car to look low and wide. You can see the wheels on this Sport model are 18-inch wheels on 235 series rubber. I mean, this is a tire size that Honda fits on the Accord 6-cylinder coupe, so it's good to see Honda putting very fat tires. They're actually fatter than the previous generation SI, if you guys are keeping count. Now, overall, the profile of the hatch certainly doesn't look like a traditional hatch. Honda wanted it to look very much sleeker and lower, and it honestly, to me, kind of looks very similar to the, or reminiscent of the old Accord Cross Tour or Cross Tour. However, I think it's a much better interpretation of the design, especially when you look at the rear spoiler you get that's on the roof and that's integrated into the tail lights. Now, when you look at the rear of the car of the Sport model, you can see the Sport and Sport Touring models will have their own badge, whereas the other LX, EX, and EXL trims will not. And the one thing that really I love about the Sport is the center-mounted finish exhaust pipes. That is exclusive to the Sport and the Sport Touring. It gives you an additional 6 horsepower and a nicer sound if you guys go for the manual transmission as well. Now, when you look at the taillights, the LED signature that's in the front is mimicked at the back. These taillights are not full LEDs. You still have an incandescent for the brake light and for the turn signal and the reverse light. But overall, I think the proportions of the Civic hatch certainly are exciting. They're definitely different. And if you guys are cross-shopping it with a Golf and a Mazda 3, the Civic hatch certainly has its own unique perspective to the hatchback design. So the Civic Sport actually does not come with Honda's push-button start and smart key access. Instead, you have the company's traditional in-key remote fob system. To lock the door, you just push the lock button here. To unlock it, it works like every other key fob. But you can see here, opening the door and looking at the interior of the Sport, it's very similar to what you find in the regular base Civic LX sedan. A couple of key differences: you'll notice the steering wheel is leather wrapped along with the shift knob on my particular tester, and then you'll also get the Sport pedals as part of the Sport trim level. But you can see, stepping inside the vehicle, it basically feels like every other Civic. It has a very nice low stance. You have a pretty good view of the road, and then of course the headroom in here is pretty good because the roof is a little higher, so you will notice that when you're getting in the vehicle. Now, because it doesn't have push button start, traditional key fob here, make sure the vehicle is in neutral, put the clutch in, and then turn the key to start the engine up. Now, shutting the door, the thunk sounds pretty solid. the Honda says that the hatchback's chassis is about 52% stiffer versus the old Civic hatchback that was available in Europe. But you can see here, listening to the engine, it makes a pretty nice noise. We'll go into the test drive later on. It's typical Honda, free revving, very smooth. And then you can see here, looking at the rest of the interior at a glance, I'm noticing quite a few things here. First of all, the Sport has this carbon fiber look interior trim. I believe it also comes on the Sport Touring trim, while the EX, LX, and EXL models will have a slightly different finish. The instrument panel is basically the same what you get in the LX model. It doesn't have that full TFT screen that you get on the EX trims and up, but you'll also notice it has red color illumination for the coolant temperature and the fuel gauge. Honestly, I kind of wish Honda offered it on the Sport. You can get that on an EX sedan with a stick, so keep in mind if you guys want those features with the larger screen here, you have to go for an EX sedan with a stick. In terms of the materials, it's basically the same as the regular Civics. It's slightly soft touch right here on the upper door panels, some fake silver trim plastic here. I'm not particularly a fan of this material here. The higher trims stitch this in cloth or leather, and then it is soft touch padded right here. At least the window is automatic one touch for both front windows. That's a good, nice feature that Honda included. The steering wheel feels nice. I like the fact that it's leather wrapped. It has the, the traditional buttons here for your radio, your cruise control. The 9-3 extension feels really good. You have automatic headlights at least with some fog lights on the Sport. And then coming to the rest of the dash here, you can see the dash is soft touch on the upper portion. There's some of that fake stitching right here on the lower part of the dash, and it's all hard touch plastic here. The center console is an interesting place. First of all, I've really only showed you guys the full newer or higher trims, so you're not really used to seeing the traditional knobs and buttons here. I actually really like it. It's very simple to use, really well labeled. The screen is only a 5-inch screen here, and this is not a touch screen. You have to use the actual displays here and there. But it works relatively well. It's not really going to blow your mind away. It doesn't even have satellite radio, so that kind of sucks. But you do have your media connection down here for your iPod connection, all the way buried down here, which you can hide behind. Hide your phone down here or whatnot. When you put the vehicle in reverse, Honda still gives you a backup camera with the 3 different views. It doesn't have trajectory or parking sensors, of course. This is the Sport model, so it's a little bit on the basic side when it comes to those features. At least they still give you automatic climate control. It's a single zone. The upper trims will give you a dual zone. And then of course down here you have your traditional, parking brake here, or not really traditional, it's your electronic parking brake with a brake hold function. Your Econ button is here. And then the manual transmission is interesting. It's typical Honda smooth. It goes through the gates really nicely, but the throws are a little bit longer than I would like. I imagine some owners may swap in a short throw shifter when it becomes available. But again, this stuff is what Honda's saving for the SI. In terms of the center console, it's the same stuff from the sedan. This slides and adjusts. It has these removable cup holders here, and you can also move this forward and back if you'd like. The storage itself is pretty deep, so in terms of the storage options, Honda offers a lot. It's typical in the company's way. Looking at the glove compartment here, it kind of just cheaply falls. It doesn't have, it's not damped, it's not lined with felt, but it's a pretty good size. There is no sunroof available on the Sport, so that's something you're going to have to give up if you guys want to go with the stick and the sporty model. And then the cloth seats. I'm not typically a fan of the way the cloth feels. It's a little scratchy, but the seat itself is pretty comfortable, and I found them to be really supportive on longer drives. Looking at the back seat of the Civic hatchback, it's pretty similar to the sedan in terms of legroom. It's one of the largest in the class. You can see the higher roofline allows for a little bit of a easier ingress and egress, especially for you taller folks. But stepping inside back here, you can see the floor space is also very good underneath the front seats. Surprisingly, the hump here is pretty large. The older Civic generations had a flat floor. And then the Sport, unfortunately, doesn't give you adjustable head restraints or an armrest here, but the seats themselves, they fold down 60/40. Shutting the door, the materials here are actually hard touch plastic, but it does have a nice graining material with that same cheap plastic on the other parts of the door trim. Surprisingly, Honda doesn't give you any map pockets or any vents back here, so in terms of storage, the back seat is a little bit lacking on the base Sport trim. Now, because this is the hatchback model, the important question of the day is how much stuff can you actually fit in the trunk? Now, Honda claims that the hatch actually has the most cargo capacity in the class, about 5 more cubic feet of space versus the current Mazda 3 hatchback. With the seats up, you're looking at around 25.7 cubic feet of space, which honestly, it's a pretty good amount of space, about twice what you get in the Civic sedan. This is why I particularly love hatchbacks. Now, what you're also going to notice here, there's a nice little cargo cover that goes right across, which is honestly a pretty small design. The cargo material cover actually kind of feels a little cheap to me, but a little bit, I'm nitpicking here. But if you want, you can basically take this out and you can also put it on the other side if you prefer to have the cargo cover go to the other side. But if you fold the seats down, which are also pretty easy to do, the floor is not entirely flat, but Honda didn't actually have any cargo numbers for us when you fold it flat, but it looks like roughly a little over 45 cubic feet to me, which is honestly less than the Honda Fit gives you. But the fact that this is not the same platform as the Fit, it doesn't have that magic seat where the floor is so low. Overall, the cargo capacity of this new hatch is definitely much improved, and I think a lot of you who are looking for a hatch are going to be very pleased with what Honda offers here. Now, underneath this sleek styling, Honda wanted the Civic hatch to have its own unique performance, so the company decided to make the 1.5-liter turbo standard in the hatchback that is optional in the sedan. Now, in the hatchback, it does actually have a little bit more power versus the sedan if you guys go for the sport trim level or the manual transmission. Now, what you're looking at is an all-new motor design that was introduced last year. It's the 1.5-liter Earth Dreams direct injection double overhead cam turbocharged 4-cylinder. Without VTEC, it has variable timing control, but not Honda's patented VTEC system. If you guys want that, you're going to have to step down to the 2-liter motor that's available in the sedan or the coupe. Now, in this particular one that I'm showing you, it makes 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. If you guys go for an LX, it makes 167 pound-feet of torque with the manual, and then the CVT drops that to 174 horsepower or 162 pound-feet of torque. Now, all Civics, of course, are front-wheel drive. The vehicle weighs just under 3,000 pounds on certain trims, maybe slightly over if you guys go for the top-of-the-line model. And fuel economy, Honda says, is pretty identical to the sedan. You're going to basically get 40 miles to the gallon with the CVT, with this combination. Expect the manual to be slightly less because of its gearing versus the CVT. But this Civic hatch with a stick is definitely a car that you guys have all been waiting to see how it drives. So let's get out on the road and see how it works. Okay, so if you guys remember my review of the first Civic sedan last year, you'll remember that I thought it was a really great car. The new Civic's platform is just incredibly solid, incredibly stiff. I think the vehicle itself is much quieter than the previous Civic. The sportiness is back. I mean, Honda has basically found their mojo. They found their magic. So one of the things I really complained about, that every enthusiast complained about, is the lack of a manual transmission. We all basically wanted to see Honda put a stick shift back in this car. And it was something that the company was, committed to. And they offered a stick in the 2-liter model, but the turbo was really what the enthusiast was really wondering, how would it handle with a stick? So this is my first time driving the Civic 1.5T with a manual, and I'm happy to report that it is a very, very interesting car for sure. Now, because it's a manual, you can really take advantage of the flat torque curve that this 1.5T really offers you. And the sport model that I'm driving has its own unique exhaust, so you get slightly more horsepower, a little bit of a deeper growl. Honestly, it's still pretty quiet. I know you guys are probably listening as I'm driving this thing through the gears, but it's a very, very torquey engine, and that's not something you associate with Hondas at all. Now, there's not really any test data for this car, but it feels like a 0-60 time in the mid 7-second range. The CVT roughly does the same. Honda says that this engine combination is probably as quick as the old Civic Si, which it feels like it is because of the very broad and flat torque curve. But one thing you don't get is that sound. There's no characteristic VTEC growl, of course, because this engine doesn't have VTEC. But what you do get is a very nice, strong mid-range surge that you don't typically associate with Honda engines at all. So it's a very interesting and nice driving experience. In typical Honda fashion, the clutch is very light. It has decent feedback. It may actually be a little too light for my taste. The shifter has the traditional Honda snick feel. The throws are a little bit longer than I would like as well. I mean, the car reminds you there that this is not an SI. It's basically just a sportier version of the Civic, the 10th gen Civic platform. And you know, I commend Honda for making the changes that they did and giving the sport model a little bit more power and just a unique look to its own. I mean, there are times where I was driving this thing where I seriously had so many people stop and ask me about this car because it looks like an SI. And you know, chirping into second is pretty easy to do with this car, despite the fact that it has 18-inch wheels. It's just an incredibly joyful car, especially when you start getting it around some back roads. I'm really impressed with this car, with the way this car drives. It's so much better than the CVT Quartz model that I've driven in the past and showed you guys. It's just a joy to go through the gates and really ring out the engine. Now, with a turbo engine, some things you may wonder about, how's the lag? And there is slight initial lag when you first tip into the throttle, and the power slightly tapers off. I mean, it really will keep pulling to that 6,500 RPM Redline, but you feel the power not pull quite as hard anymore, which is a little disappointing considering Honda engines pull so hard to its past Redline. But that's not the case with this new turbo engine. This is basically the new style of Honda power delivery with their newer engines. But one thing that Honda did improve is the actual steering of this car. It has its own unique suspension, its own unique steering, and the steering itself it really talks to you. It's alive. The car's chassis changes direction so quickly, and the suspension stays relatively flat. It's a very neutral feeling car. I don't feel any torque steer at all when I'm hard on the gas. It does have a little bit of wheel hop if you guys get really aggressive with the throttle, but again, this is a front drive car with 180 horsepower, no limited slip diff, so you kind of have to expect stuff like that. But overall, I'm really surprised. The ride quality is also good, despite the fact that these are 18-inch wheels. I find it to be firm yet compliant. And the noise is also not bad at all. It's just a really nice car to drive on an everyday basis. Is there anything I don't like about the way this sport hatchback with a manual drives? You know, a couple things, but honestly, Honda's going to address it in the SI. The exhaust could be louder. The clutch is a little too light. The throws could be a little shorter. And I also don't like the interior of the Sport. I mean, I like the fact that there's a leather-wrapped wheel, a leather-wrapped shifter, aluminum pedals, but I would like to see Honda offer a sunroof. I'd like to see them offer the larger display with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. I'd like to see them offer the TFT display, the digital display, as opposed to this one. This interior, aside from the leather on the steering wheel and the shift knob, kind of reminds me of what you get in the Garden variety LX models, and it also lacks push-button start. That's something that I prefer to see. Again, Honda is most likely going to address all of that in the upcoming SI and Type R models. So with the hatchback body style absent from the Civic lineup for roughly the last decade, a lot of you are probably overjoyed to finally have the versatile option back here in the United States. Now, after driving this all-new hatch, I'm happy to report it's probably one of the best driving 10th gen Civics I've ever driven. Now, regarding the design, I think it's also one of the best looking Civics in the lineup, especially in this particular one that I'm showing you, the Sport with a manual transmission. Now, as I said earlier, the Sport gives you the bigger wheels and tires, the aero kit, and then some upgrades on the interior. Now, regarding the price, if you guys are interested in picking one of these up, they're actually already on sale right now, except for the Sport and the Sport Touring trim, which will go on sale in a couple of months. And the Civic Hatch is going to be more expensive than the sedan, obviously. It comes with a turbocharged engine as standard, along with a couple of other different features that the sedan doesn't have. The LX with a manual transmission will start at around $19,700, about $1,000 more than the sedan, which is honestly a reasonable amount of money. Now, this particular one that I'm showing you, the Sport with a manual, starts at $21,300. A really good value if you guys are looking for a daily driver that's fuel efficient, fun to drive, and spacious on the inside. Now, for all of the go fast looks that this car offers, some of you may be wondering, is it an SI Lite? Does this replace, or is it a placeholder for a Civic SI until the all-new SI actually comes out? And after driving the car, I don't really think that it is an SI Lite. What I think it is a very fun Civic to drive on a daily basis that's very comfortable, it has a really light clutch and easy shifter, and I think a lot of you who are looking for a new daily driver will find a lot to like with this all-new Civic Sport with the manual transmission. But anyways, if you guys are also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, keep subscribed to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.